This podcast is brought to you by the Women's Jiu-Jitsu Alliance and in part by Elevate Jiu-Jitsu Magazine, the Warrior Forge Project, and the Master Women's Movement.
No, I think I'll start it. So Stacey and I share seats on the board of the WJJA, and was it October or November of last year? You guys came out, and was it? Yeah, last year. So much has happened. So October and November of last year, Stacey came out to be a part of a retreat weekend that the Women's Jiu-Jitsu Alliance was hosting, and she kicked it off with the Warrior Forge Project self-defense seminar in Decatur, Georgia. And one of the things that really, really has stuck out to me ever since, and I've been extremely curious about, was when you discussed boundaries. And you went a little in depth there, but obviously I know there's a lot more to that subject as a whole. And it's something that I believe that the majority of us are probably vulnerable to and don't realize it. Because you mentioned some things that really woke me up and had me thinking. And I was like, I mean, it really kind of shocked me. That was even a thing for me, and there are some areas of my life. So I wanted to talk more about boundaries and what are boundaries and what does that mean? And you brought up something that I have kind of been living by ever since I've met you is Kadima, and I think through this whole thing over the last few weeks I've been having that in the back of my mind, Kadima. And
yeah, that's actually what brought together, this podcast, and the thought of this podcast was the concept of Kadima and how it's getting us through the whole epidemic. You wanted to know immediately what Kadima meant because we open our seminar that way. So even before everybody knows kind of what the idea of the concept of Kadima is, before we start, all the instructors put their hands in and we count down, and then we say Kadima, we break with Kadima. And that pretty much, to us, that's a way of living that we've learned through Krav Maga and through Brian's teaching, Steve Spink's teaching is, just fighting through the hard times. And in martial arts, in the physical part of doing martial arts, there's always that point every day, every practice of fighting through, physically fighting through something. And it gets you, everybody knows that's had a couple years or more of martial arts, that concept itself inside martial arts helps you through life, helps you in your everyday life to fight through things mentally and things that come up in your life. So welcome to the show, Sifu Ryan Spink. Sifu is down in Victorville, California, and you want to kind of explain to us who you are, and we want to talk a lot about Kadima in this one, so the concept of that and what you've taught.
Okay, well, I'm Ryan Spink. I teach martial arts here at Cobra Kai Martial Arts here in Victorville. I work with Joe Stevenson. I'm also a amateur ref with the California State through the CAMA organization, and been doing martial arts for over 35 years. I went to Israel for a summer. I trained out there in Krav Maga. That's where I was introduced to this concept through Krav Maga of Kadima. It's a word basically meaning in Hebrew to move forward. It can be translated as progressive. It can also be translated as charging or taking an assertive act. When you think of the battlefield, when people say charge, the word they yell is Kadima, to move forth aggressively. And the way it was taught to me, the best example given was that the best way to solve a problem is to attack the problem, to face the problem, to move forward and eliminate the problem. So they would use the example of a building that's on fire. They would say, you know, you have a building on fire and everyone's running out because they're scared of the fire. Obviously, they don't want to get burned. But a firefighter is running into the fire. And it's not that they're afraid or they're not afraid or that they don't care about their own safety. It's quite the contrary. They understand the fire, and they understand the only way to put out the fire is by confronting it. So they would say the firefighter is a prime example of Kadima. While other people are running from the problem, they're facing the problem. And so in practical terms for Krav Maga, it would translate as attack the attacker. You know, they come at me, I go at them. Rather than move back, I move in. Embrace the conflict. And I found this to be an interesting philosophy too for life. And so when we were training a group of women years ago to be instructors, they kind of formed a little team, and that's where this thing got started. And we called them the Team Kadima, and because it's a proactive approach. And that's what it breaks down to, is a proactive, aggressive approach. But it's not just that. It's also about understanding threats, understanding problems, understanding what you need to do and doing it, working through it, not trying to avoid it. One of the interesting comments or statements I ever came across was in a book I was reading, The Road Less Traveled by Scott M. Peck, PhD. And he said, the root of all mental illness in life is an attempt to avoid the pain of life. Basically, when we try to avoid pain, when we try to procrastinate, that is just adds to our anxiety, adds to our depression. He says, instead, what we need to learn is a healthy way to confront problems, confront challenges, and work through them. And I kind of chuckled because as I was reading that book, I went, wow, he just described eloquently what Kadima is. It's about confronting challenges and problems, whether physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual in your life. So that's Kadima in a nutshell.
You know, that goes really kind of hand in hand with jujitsu and that, right? That I was thinking along the lines the other day about how jujitsu teaches you there's going to be obstacles, but there's always a solution to that obstacle. You know, you just got to kind of move forward and move through it and find the solution and just keep going. Versus, you know, if you procrastinate, you're going to get submitted somehow immediately. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, do you find the same thing, Sifu, with, you know, every martial art pretty much, right?
Every martial art, you know, I've studied a wide variety of martial arts. And I always tell people I haven't found a martial art I don't enjoy. I enjoy them all. Now, are all of them applicable to actual fighting? That's questionable. It all depends on the arena or what it is that you want from your martial art. But in general, I would say that all martial arts on a what we could call the mental or philosophical level is about confronting problems and confronting obstacles, because you know, in traveling around, especially as a referee, you know, I've traveled around as a student, training from a wide variety of different instructors. I've traveled around as a seminar provider, teaching people from all walks of life, taught military, law enforcement, and so forth. As a business owner, and now working as a referee, you know, you travel around, you meet all kinds of people, fans, fighters, coaches, other entrepreneurs, business people. And I've kind of come down to the conclusion that everyone is a fighter. That is, everyone gets up every day, they go out and they confront life, the series of problems, what you were talking about. They confront challenges, and in their own way, they're fighting. It can be everything from fighting depression, fighting drug addiction, to simple just getting through the coronavirus shut down, dealing with family. Everyone's been locked up. Whatever your challenge is, you're fighting through it. And I've noticed that people are either fighters, everyone's a fighter, but there's also that category that's kind of forgotten they're fighters. And so they relinquish the responsibility and they take on the victim mantle. Now, I'm not pointing fingers or anything like that. What I'm saying is people surrender their own power, their own ability to deal with the situation or deal with obstacles. And you experience it when you do jujitsu, if you want to use that jujitsu. We all have been there. You're on the mat, you're rolling, you're in a difficult spot. And sometimes rather than to work your way out of that position, you just kind of give up and figure, I'm tapping. I'm done. And then afterwards, you kind of kick yourself in the butt thinking, because the partner looked at you and said, I hadn't gone for the submission yet. You could have still got out of that, the upper belt. And you're like, I just felt I was trapped. What you really did was you gave up. You know what I'm saying? You tapped out early is what you did instead of working the problem. Or you find that person, let's say you're in class, you're going through rotation, and you know that this person's so much better, they come harder, and you know what and you're just like, hell, I'll just let them do their move, let them tap me so I can move on, rather than dealing with it. Or vice versa. Sometimes you come on and you got that easy student and you're like, I'm just going to roll this guy, versus saying, hey, I'm going to work my difficult moves, the moves I never get a chance to move. I'm going to try something really crazy here, and really step up my game in a way that I'm uncomfortable and let them work their drills. You know what I'm saying? The thing is, if you have the Kadima mindset, and something I've seen, again, going back to traveling around, meeting different people, you engage the conflict, you engage the challenge, or you tap out and you say, I'm going to play victim. I'm out of here. It's their responsibility. The coach didn't train me well. I wasn't prepared. I wasn't this. Not, okay, this is the situation. I'm going to fight my best. I'm going to get through it. There's a difference between a fighter mentality, which is a Kadima mentality, and I'm just a victim. I'm being caught up in the wave. There's nothing I can do about it mentality. And those are what I'm talking about. And that's a simple choice. And that's what it boils down to, is a simple choice that you got to make, how you're going to live your life.
Yeah, that's for sure. I used to be a huge procrastinator prior to jiu-jitsu. Now I'm just a little bit of a procrastinator.
Made a 2% difference, right?
That's right.
So how would this, how is this relating to you at the moment, as far as, the gyms shut down, right? And everybody's kind of looking at ways to open back up and all of that kind of thing. I know a lot of people that we've been talking to lately are kind of in this weird situation of going from accepting the stay-at-home thing to what are we going to do when the gyms start opening up? What are the steps that we're going to take? And then some people are just so close to losing their businesses or already have lost their business. And where does, Kadima fit into that? And what would be your recommendation?
Well, I because I'm in that fight right now, you're like, I have to laugh because I have this image, of two fighters fighting it out. You can't tell who's winning right now. And someone from the side saying, hey, I've got a fight next week. What do you suggest? The fighter's looking over going, what the hell? I'm in the middle of it right now. I'm trying to win my battle. I don't know. I can tell you, the good, the bad, the ugly of where we're at right now. Yes, every day I come in, we send out emails to all of our members and our sponsors. Obviously, some have been able to continue paying. Others have asked to put their membership on hold, and others have just straight up canceled because of their own personal financial situations. And while I appreciate and I want to say, you know, here publicly, thank you from the bottom of my heart for those members that have continued to pay and support and make sure I can feed my instructors, because we have about 12 different instructors here on staff with other supporting staff as well. And we've been able to give them a paycheck. That's due to those members that have helped out. As far as those other members that had to cancel or put on hold, I totally understand, because they've written me their stories. My phone went off there. Sorry about that. Where they're being put in financial difficulty as well. As far as the gym's concerned, obviously we are looking at options. When it comes to reopening, we have several challenges facing us, like social distancing. I was just talking the other day on the phone with one of our investors and partners in the gym, and we were discussing how do you do martial arts with social distancing? You know, especially jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, Krav Maga, Eskrima. These are up close and personal activities. So obviously we're going to have to talk to members. We've got several things that we're thinking of. We're going to have to implement. Obviously, probably checking temperature when people come in. Just having that frank discussion with members about if you're feeling off or you're feeling sick or you got the sniffles, something, then just removing yourself from class, not coming to the gym. Hygiene, a big thing. Obviously, if you've been following the press briefings and the actual government sites, where the CDC and so forth, you know, detergent and cleaning and things like that are, you know, they're very effective. As far as the coronavirus goes, it's a very weak virus. So cleanliness, just being clean, will kill this thing. And so we're looking at obviously having at least one or two members, or staff members, that are constantly cleaning all day long, wiping things down, really taking that extra effort to sanitize the gym continually, not every 2 hours or every 4 hours, but to just be there constantly, continually wiping things down, and encouraging people, you know, that use the weights or that are in here, that we're keeping our hygiene up and encouraging people to keep their personal hygiene up. Obviously, there's going to be people that don't feel comfortable. There's nothing we can do about that. As far as your contracts, as far as your lease and other things like that, those are going to have to be renegotiated. And that's the reality of it. Obviously, in a shopping center, a landlord doesn't want to lose all their clients, but at the same time, that landlord, because we've talked to other landlords on ours, we've talked to, they're still getting their bills from the bank, and, you know, electricity and things like that. So this is going to require a total Kadima attitude, and you have a choice. You can either say, look, this isn't worth it. I wasn't making it to begin with. I want out, and I totally get it. This has been terrible, especially for the gym owners. You figure that the fitness industry as a whole is one of the hardest. As a matter of fact, in business courses, they tell you this is the worst industry to start a business in. We have a rate of something like 70% or something like that. It's crazy. Everyone thinks that they're going to open up a little mom and pop gym and it's going to grow into the next 24 or World's Gym. It doesn't happen. More gyms close every single year as small businesses, more so than any other industry. And to have something like this hit, this has been a big purge, not in a good way either. So to answer your question briefly, I already talked too much. I would say you're just going to have to look at the financial side and attack it. You're going to have to look at the marketing side again and attack it. You're going to have to look at how you're delivering your services in the gym and attack it. But most importantly, you're going to have to ask yourself, are you going to let coronavirus knock you out of business, or are you going to, you know, fight through this and go down slugging? So as far as we are here, we're in the middle of trying to come up with these solutions. These are just some of the things that we've been talking about. I don't want to say that we've got the magic fix or we figured it out, because we haven't. But these are the things that we're looking at and we're looking at doing. And I can just tell you that we kind of feel like we have no choice but to figure a way through this. Quitting or shutting down the doors is definitely not an option for us at this point. On the other hand, I can't say that we kind of feel like you're starting all over again. And the worst part is you're starting all over in an environment where people are apprehensive about close personal contact.
They're scared to go out, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly. So my recommendation to a gym owner or anyone running a gym is you're going to really have to look at all the areas of your business, primarily how you're delivering your business, and try to come up with ways that meet the guidelines or at least make it safer. But at the same time, to people coming to gyms, I would tell you that I don't want to downplay the threat of the virus by any means, but good, clean sanitation, and just monitoring your own health. And if everyone works together, obviously in the gym, you can't stay 6 feet apart from each other all the time, you know? So it's even more the responsibility of me to make sure that I'm doing what I can, that you're doing what you can, and so forth. But that's the reality, and I'm sure that well, there's the reality.
So I'm curious, and I'll give you a second, Nicole, if you have some questions for Sifu as well. But I'm curious, do you personally have any habits that help you Kadima through the day, and habits that maybe you share with the employees that help them as well? We've been talking about habit stacking a lot. One of our podcasts that we're going to put out there this week is on habit stacking and how to make healthy habits. So is there anything that works for you personally to maybe get your day started? Maybe if you start feeling kind of defeated throughout your day, what you do to kind of come back and Kadima through?
As far as during the lockdown, or you mean life in general?
Both, life in general, like your day-to-day, even, you know, this week, today, whatever.
Okay, well, first of all, you know, I would have to say, before we get to the habit, you know, because really your thought pattern, the way you think about things, the way you view the world, is going to determine your behavior. Your behavior is going to determine your habits. I would say figure out why it is you do what you do. You know, for some of you, I know that are athletes or that do jujitsu. Why is it that you do jujitsu? And it's not because it's fun. There's much more to it. There's something else. Oh, it's fun. Don't get me wrong. But there's something more that you're getting out of it. And if you can identify that, you can identify what it is that you're getting out of it and how it makes a difference. Then when it's, how should I say, when it's difficult to go to the gym, or you have someone tempting you, hey, let's go hang out instead of you going to jiu-jitsu class, right then and there, you know, nah, I'm going to jiu-jitsu class. I'm going to the gym. I'm going to go take my martial arts class. And you know why. And that's different for everybody. The reason you do it is different for everybody, but this is the thing, you got to have that reason and you got to be in touch with it. When there's at times I get discouraged, and there's at times obviously this whole situation is a very discouraging situation, but habits, I would say, I've got a ton of habits. I'm trying to right now, you blindsided me with this, and I'm trying to condense them down. In a nutshell, I'll just randomly put them out. First of all, when you wake up in the morning, start your day, you need to have a little ritual. I don't care what it is. a little ritual that you're doing that starts your day, that gets it going for you. Some people make your bed. Start by making your bed. Start by getting your shower, making your bed. Some people, I have a good friend of mine, and they like to start their day off with a little scripture study and prayer. I personally do like some quiet time. I like taking at least 2 hours in the morning, waking up, starting slowly, get my breakfast, chill out, read something inspirational, or just get a little bit of the news, and then look for something a little bit motivational, and then tackle the day. Schedule how I'm going to tackle the day. Look at what I have to do. What is it that I'm expecting to get done that day, and so forth, before I just jump in. And then as things happen, or as the day develops, I find it real easy, because let's say I have something on a website I want to get done marketing, and then there's a customer complaint, or instructor is having a problem that they want me to work with them on, or a student has a question. I understand how to balance that, because I understand where my priorities lie. So for me, it's pretty easy. But I would say you definitely want to have a morning ritual. You definitely want to schedule your day. You want to schedule your week, and you want to schedule your month. And every day before you start that day, you look at those. You look at those schedules. You say, okay, this is what I'm getting done today. What didn't I get done yesterday? What am I hoping to have done by the end of the week? I'm not saying you spend a whole hour on it. It's something that should take no more than 30 minutes or 15. And at least you have some guidance, and you know why you're doing those things. And then take the day in sections. Everyone just tries to go from point A to point Z. And, or as I like to say, they like to fight the fight all the way through. Nobody fights a 15-minute fight. What you do is you fight 3 rounds of 5 minutes, right? Or if it's an amateur fight, 3 rounds of 3 minutes. So don't try to do it all at one giant street. Take time during your day, like in the middle of your day. Take the siesta. I love my siesta. Mm-hmm. Stop, take lunch, and don't look. If you're in I know some people can't do this. I feel for you. I've been in those jobs where you only get a 30-minute lunch. Managers, you're evil. If you give your people 30-minute lunches, you're evil. Okay? Nobody can reset and come back and give you 100% after woofing their food down in 30 minutes. You need a solid minimal hour and a half. So, like for us, we get a solid 2-hour, 3-hour siesta. Come back, and yeah, we're working all the way to 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. But it's productive. You need some time in the middle of the day to reset yourself, and then take the next part of the day. And then in the evening, give yourself some time to wind down. Always reward yourself, whether it's at the end of the day, end of the week, end of the month. Have those rewards planned out. I used to be a major workaholic, and literally would go a year and a half, 2 years without taking a vacation. And that's no joke. Log up 60 hours during the week, 50 hours during the week, no problem. Do that for a solid year and a half. And then finally, gun to your head, your mate tells you you are taking the vacation, and you go on a vacation, you're suddenly going, wow, this is kind of cool. I should probably do this more often. So I would say, scheduling's a big thing. Staying fit, giving time for self-care. And most of all, I'll end up with this, and then we can go more questions and stuff. But one of the other things I would say is a habit that you've got to be working on yourself as far as just self-learning. If you're not reading a book, if you're not taking time for just personal improvement, learning about whatever it is that you want to learn about. And again, I know what I said, whatever it is that is your interest. If you're into studying history, have a book on history or some famous person in history, and just take 30 minutes out of the day to read that book. work on feeding your mind, because if you're all about your job, family schedule, running the kids back and forth, and you don't give yourself some self-care and improve your own your own knowledge, your own well-being, not just physically with exercise, but mentally with study. I think it's a tragedy that people leave, let's say college, and they haven't read a book since their last time in college. And even there's students in college that make it all the way through college without ever really cracking a book. And I just don't understand that. So to me, I would say personal time reading, personal time exercising, have a schedule, put rituals in your day, and remember, most important, why it is that you do what you do. And when the going gets tough and you feel knocked down, find solace in your reason and in your rituals, and you'll get through it.
Great advice. Do you have any questions, Nicole?
So, as far as Kadima, I really don't have any questions, but I do have a question about, do boundaries play into Kadima? Is that something that, do they go hand in hand?
Well, what are you defining? Let me ask you real quick. What are you defining as boundaries? What are you?
So Stacey was teaching, she has, during her self-defense seminar, she discusses boundaries and about knowing your boundaries, setting your boundaries, sticking with your boundaries. She gives a great example of her own family during her seminar. She gave an example of her own family and kind of with her children, setting these boundaries. Now, boundaries are, I'm very interested in this because I think that a lot of people in general don't even realize that it's a thing to set boundaries, let alone, so, Kadima is about moving forward and being a fighter, and I just thought it might play in with just kind of overall, boundaries are a tricky thing, and they're hard, sometimes very hard to set and keep. Did you turn that off?
Like, give me an example of a boundary that you're talking, like that a person would be having a hard time.
Sorry, her phone just went off. So no, I'm just saying, like, in general, people don't know enough about boundaries. And if they do try to set a boundary, a lot of times they end up giving into that boundary. They don't hold the boundary because, well, it's uncomfortable, to be quite frank. So yeah, I really wanted to get into a conversation kind of around that and what that is. And
the example that we use in the seminar, I always open with, as a complete sentence, and use the kids as an example of, when you tell your kid, they're growing up and you tell them, no, you can't go to a friend's house, and then they negotiate with you and you change your answer because you're being pressured. So that's basically the example that I give at the beginning, is to hold your boundaries and basically how to make boundaries. You say, okay, you know what? I need a few minutes to think about it. I'm not going to give you a yes or a no. Go do what you're supposed to do. Come back and I'll give you that answer. And it's very hard for women, especially, to develop that set of, what do I do? How do I make boundaries? And then how do I stick by my boundaries?
A great example would be lately, I think we can have this conversation without it getting strange. Lately, there's been a lot of talk. There's been a lot of talk over the years in general, but there's been a lot of talk with people who train at gyms. And I think, let's just say, you know, it's people have compared it to like a cult type mentality at some of these gyms, right? Because people really follow and admire their professors,
Right.
sometimes to a little bit of an unhealthy level. And so then maybe one might say like, well, you know, they're kind of recognizing these things and, oh, I need to set some boundaries for myself. Yeah, I want to continue training. I want to continue doing these things. I need to set some boundaries, and they don't really maybe know how to hold those boundaries, you know? So, I mean, there's all kinds of examples, you know, of things that have kind of crossed my path, or I've seen personally, or through, you know, just being in the public and the community.
Are you talking about like people taking advantage of other people, and then also as far as sexually with male versus female on the mats, and maybe a professor and those types of boundaries?
There's, yeah, definitely.
For personal and professional boundaries.
Yeah.
And how does Kadima play into that?
Well, first of all, a good model that was given to me by Mac McDougall, Master Mac from the McDougall guys from Tulsa, Sansu. He's an HR person, and he gave me this cool little acronym, and I find it works professionally, with family, with everything. It's EBA: expectations, boundaries, accountability. And so just real quick, you know, for your employees, you set what you expect from them. What are your expectations? What is it that you want? Then you set the boundaries, what you won't tolerate, when the time limits are to get the work done, those boundaries that you will not accept. And then you always hold them accountable. Hold them accountable to the expectations, the boundaries. And accountability doesn't just mean punishment. Everyone always thinks of it as punishment, but it's actually also reward. So in case of your children, for example, I'm going to give a real benign and basic level example. Let's say I tell little Johnny that he has to get his homework done before 4 o'clock, or before he can go out to play. Okay. My expectation is he comes home from school, he gets his homework done, and by 4 o'clock or so, he can go out and play, and then dinner will be at 6, and he'll come back in for dinner. Now he comes home and he goes, hey, you know what? I'll get to my homework after dinner. Okay. Obviously, you know, and I could say, I expect you to do that. And of course, I'm coming home at 7. So I get home at 7 and he says, hey, no, I pushed the homework till after. Okay, well, that wasn't the boundary. That wasn't what was expected. I set the boundary, and now there's some accountability for that. So obviously this weekend you're grounded. That's real simple. If he does what he's supposed to do all week long, and then boom, they want to go out skating, or they want to go to a park or some big adventure, I pack everyone in the van and I take them as a reward for him being a great kid throughout the week. But what's important is that when we set our boundaries, before I tell him what he can and cannot do, I also illuminate and discuss all of those 3 areas: the accountability and what's expected. So in the case of like parenting or being a professional with working with a staff, I tell my staff, this is what I expect from you. These are the boundaries. And if you do what I expect, this will be the reward. If you don't do what I expect, this is the punishment, or this is what the accountability is. And then I hold that line. And that's just I know that example is very kindergarten in what we're talking about, because people can give us more nuanced, more difficult situation. But my point is, whenever there's a boundary set, or someone says, hey, you can't do that, the first thing that pops in my head is, well, why? And what happens if I don't do it? Like, really, what is the purpose of the boundary, and what happens after? And I think why boundaries are hard to hold is because people do not understand, or it hasn't been explained, the accountability side and what the expectations are. Does that make sense? And so when you find yourself questioning a boundary, or like the example you gave, you said, hey, you're not supposed to go over to a friend's house without me first, meeting the parents or whatever. And then they're like, no, I want to da. They want to negotiate this from you. It's not hard to hold that boundary if that boundary was originally established with an accountability and an expectation ahead of time. Does that make sense? And so from a Kadima standpoint, then Kadima, meaning move forward, nerds, deal with it. It's really easy to deal with because you can confront the negotiation with, hey, look, I'm not about to compromise your safety. I, as a parent that love you and want to protect you, I just will not tolerate you going to someone's house who I haven't met that person, and I don't know where they live, and I don't have their contact number. I'm sorry. Look, I'm sure Billy down the street, I'm sure his dad and mom are great people, but I don't know them. And the boundary is you can't go over there till I meet them. The solution is real easy. I go meet them. So this weekend, I'm busy. You can't go to his house. But next weekend, possibly, because during the week, I'll meet Billy's parents. This is real simple. And holding it, it's easy to hold your boundary when you understand the possible consequences of what could possibly happen if you did not hold your boundary. You know what I'm saying? There people who have, how do I say it? Because we've made mistakes, we ourselves haven't held to our own boundaries. Suddenly when we pull ourselves back and we pick ourselves up and we let our wounds heal and we get over it and we establish that boundary and someone comes along and says, nah, you go, no, been down that road. I'm not going there. You know what? I'm not doing it. But why is it so easy now for you to hold that boundary? Because you understand what the accountability is. You understand what's going to happen if you don't. And you understand the expectations of why it is that you establish that boundary in the first place. So I guess to answer your question, for me, if I find myself questioning or negotiating or actually considering moving my boundaries, the first thing I ask myself when I set these boundaries, what was the reason for the boundary in the first place? You know what I'm saying? Why did I feel it necessary? And right now, what's at stake? What am I compromising? Why is it I think things have changed to move this boundary? You know what I'm saying? I can tell you recently in working as a referee for MMA events, I can tell you that it's been a big eye-opener because those boundaries we hold are extreme boundaries. I mean, we hold the littlest thing. I've held fighters up there at the cage. And I mean, the TV's rolling, the promoter is pissed because, they've got TV time they're paying for. They're pissed. The audience is like, what the hell's going on? And I'm standing there at the cage because this guy's toenails are a little bit too long and I want them clipped. And they were supposed to be clipped in the back room. Yeah. And now the referee in the cage is looking at the referee doing the pat down, who's me. And he's like, Ryan, what's the deal? And I look at it and I said, I don't like the toenails. And the coach is going, oh, they're not that bad. And, I'm like, no, I'm not letting him pass me until you guys clip those toenails. Well, where's the clippers? I don't know. Find them. And everyone's running around looking for toenail clippers. And they're going, really? You're holding up the fight over something as stupid as this? Yes. Because here's the deal. Our boundary is for two things: the safety of the fighters and the fairness of the fight. Safety and fairness. So if I was to compromise and just say, you know what, they're not that rough, they're not that long, but a little bit quiet, hell, just jump up in the cage. And he ends up in a north-south position, scratches the guy's eyelid accidentally or something. Okay, or let's say it's not even that bad of a scratch. Let's say it rips back his toenail and now he can't really fight, or something happens. First, that's not safe. And then, did we really get a fair fight? Did we get to see? And what I mean by a fair fight, everyone thinks that a fair fight means cheating. No, a fair fight also means we get to see the best that these athletes get to provide for each other, to actually compete at their top level. And if something happens in the ring like that due to my negligence, it affects the fairness of the outcome of the fight. And we don't get the best performance. We don't get to see the best performance that these two athletes have to offer. And it was because I didn't hold my boundary. You know what I'm saying? And so as a professional working as a professional referee, no, you just stand there and people yell at you, they get upset. But in the end, they respect you, and you start to build up a reputation, and people start seeing your track record of, you know what? He officiates good fights. Well, why is it a good fight? Because I make sure that the boundaries that are set there for a purpose, and I understand that purpose, are followed and obeyed. And guess what we get? We get the best performances. You get the best fights that people go, my gosh, that was a really great fight. You did a good job. I didn't do a good job. The fighters did a good job. I just helped the fighters keep the boundaries. That's all. And I think that's important with parenting, and it's important with women's self-defense, in the sense that you have your boundaries and you realize why the boundary's there. And if someone's pressuring in on those boundaries, someone's trying to get you to slip up that boundary, you remind yourself of why the boundary was set, the expectations, and what the possible consequences are. And you just ask yourself, well, shit, if you could live with those possible consequences, why did you set the boundary in the first place? To me, it becomes, after you think about it, you sit there and you go, maybe I could let you go over to Billy's. Maybe I don't know. Maybe you go over there, something bad happened. You know what? No, you're not going to Billy's. Now that I think about it, you're not going to Billy. I don't want you talking to Billy, I mean, it works both, it kind of, you understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, it's harder though for women, especially, I think, in their professional lives and in their relationships, to make those boundaries, because they're not sure themselves what the consequences are.
Okay, then
boundary.
I would ask, what is your expectation? You know what I'm saying? You obviously set that boundary for a reason in the first place. Right. You know what I'm saying? And if it's an arbitrary boundary, then yeah, sit down and think about it, not in the moment, before there's a play. You should never, the time to get a fight strategy is not in the middle of the fight.
Which we also talk about in all of our training and our seminars and everything, is that you want to have that, plan, that forethought. Like, if you're going to have a boundary, why do you have a boundary? What is your expectation? And with all of your relationships, whether personal or professional, you should be able to set those expectations and those boundaries. And what is your why for that? You can't, like you said, you can't come up with those boundaries in the moment, because then you don't even know your own why.
Well, let's go back to the original topic of the podcast, Kadima, and what you wanted to talk about, which is boundaries. Mm-hmm. Go back to my example of the firefighter. Firefighter doesn't run into the fire and then go, oh, I wonder how we're going to put out this fire. Gee, is it going to be water or is it going to be foam? Is this an electric fire or is this a chemical fire? My brother is a firefighter. And if you really want it, just drop a quarter and he will talk all night about firefighting. And it's very interesting to me because, where we just see flames and you throw water on it, if it's a chemical fire, you may not want to throw water on it. It could be a chemical reaction that actually causes the fire even worse, or electric fire, you know what I'm saying. Different, you have to understand what it is you're battling. What's interesting about what I said with the firefighter who runs into the fire and is the icon of Kadima, note he doesn't run into the fire ignorantly. So if you accept Kadima as your life philosophy, that means you're educating yourself. You have a plan. You just don't arbitrarily charge on to a new challenge. No, that would be if you took the concept of Kadima and thought, well, it's just about confronting. No, it's also about preparation and confronting the challenge with knowledge of how you're going to defeat it. You have a plan. That's why I said you start your day, you have that ritual, you schedule your day, you have a plan of what's expected, what you need to. If you look at something and you don't know how to accomplish it, don't charge into it. Quite the opposite. Take time and say, okay, maybe the first thing I need to charge into are the books and some websites and some videos. Maybe I need to charge into finding an expert who can teach me the skills or tell me how to solve this problem. Now that they told me what I need to do, now I'm going to charge onto the problem. It's just like on the mat in jiu-jitsu. You don't say, hey, put me in a triangle choke and let me figure out how to get out of this. You don't do that. You go to your instructor and you say, hey, I'm having a problem with triangle chokes. Your instructor, if he's like one of mine, depending, Joe Stevenson will sit there and he'll give you a bunch of different ways to get out of the triangle choke. Matter of fact, we were just doing that 2 weeks ago. A lot of fun. And my other instructor, Ramel Dunbar, he'll sit there and the first thing he's going to ask is, well, how did he catch you? What kind of triangle? Is he triangling you or is he really setting you up for the armbar? What is it that's going on here? Give me the scenario. Oh, now that I understand what it is, the problem in full context that you're facing, here are some things you're going to want to work with. And then in the process, you know, and if it's like Joe Stevenson, who's really good at this, because, you know, I hate to admit it, but I'm getting older and I wasn't the most flexible or athletic kid to begin with. And there's some times Joe get in there and, you know, some of the guys are doing these really cool moves to get out of that triangle. Joe will look at me and say, look, Ryan, you lack the flexibility here. You're not going to do that. Do this. This is your best option. This is where you need to defend. This is how you're going to do this. And then we work it slowly. Guess what? When I feel like I have a good plan, someone has shown me the options, what do? I jump into rolling time. I say, hey, dude, let's slap that choke. Let's take it. Let's take that choke on. But I don't try, and you know people in jiu-jitsu that are like this. You know white belts. And I swear it's got to be the white belt because no one makes it to blue belt with this mentality. White belts are like, just keep doing it. I'm going to learn by doing. I'm going to learn by doing. As a referee, I come across some fighters. They're like literally 1-8 in their fight record. You've won one fight and you lost the last 8. And you're just looking at them and you say, where do you train? Oh, I don't. I train out of my garage. I'm self-taught. Well, I kind of was already, I just made a bet with the other guys over here that that's the answer you were going to give because your fight record shows that where you have yourself as the instructor, you have a fool as a coach. And that's how it is. You know what I'm saying? That's the truth.
Denise is dying over here.
Yeah,
I got
so
a black belt listening.
Yeah, well, you need to find people, coaches, and information. So back to what we're talking about, boundaries and so forth, and the Kadima mindset. You need to have people that are constantly educating you. You need to be learning. Then you set those boundaries based on their wisdom, your experience, and you hold them because you understand the why. If you're having a problem holding a boundary, I would say it's time to step back and re-examine why you have those boundaries. And if you really don't understand why you have those boundaries, maybe you need to get some more education. You know what I'm saying? You might find out in that education too, it's a stupid boundary. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
What's that?
realistically, there are some times, there's some things that
Just
really
saying.
ridiculous things I've seen where people are like, I don't allow my daughter to do this or my daughter to do that. And I'm like, that has no bearing on her safety at all. I mean, but it makes you feel good, whatever. You're kind of curious. Why do you have that? Well, I just think it's a good idea. Well, why is it a good idea? I don't know. It just sounds like a good idea. Okay, that's not cool either. Try to come up, understand why it is that you have those boundaries. And unfortunately, with kids, and I keep coming back to this, they may not understand all those reasons, and you got to look at the maturity level. Sometimes I explain certain expectations. If it's over their head, it's over their head. It's tough. There's still the rule. There's still the boundary. I'm not moving it because I understand why it's there.
That brings up a question that I also had, and it goes along the lines of, teaching kids boundaries, how to set boundaries for themselves and what that means for them. I don't know if you have much. You're a parent, I'm assuming. So
no. Actually, I've only been a parent for a little bit to a stepchild, but I would say that in 30-something years of teaching martial arts and working with parents, and my philosophy has always been, and go off on a tangent here real quick, talking to anyone that's watching this, any parent that's watching this that's interested in putting their kids in martial arts. I get people ask me all the time, what's the best martial art to put your kid in? And right away I tell them, you're asking the wrong question. You need to go down and meet the instructor. And you need to make sure that the instructor is in alignment with your values and your expectations and what you want from martial arts training for your child. Then we'll worry about whatever style they're teaching. If you want your child to learn discipline, respect, you don't take them to a gym that's all about kick ass and take names and leave bodies behind. You take them to a different kind of gym. On the other hand, if you're dealing with bullies and you want to teach self-esteem, you want to talk to that instructor and see how well they relate and understand that problem. You know what I'm saying? If you don't feel comfortable with the instructor, that's where you start. I've always told parents, and this is the point I'm getting to, I've always told parents, look, I'm your tool, okay? We've all seen Charlie Brown, and we all know how the teacher sounds in Charlie Brown, right? Wah, 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 wah. Okay, at some point, you as a parent, just face it, the kids 11, 12, 13, they hit that block, and you go from talking to hi Johnny to wah 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 wah. And it's important that you take a back role as being the CEO of their mentors. And so I would tell the parents, look, you tell them to clean their room, all they hear is static, white noise. So you come to me because I'm your tool, and they look up to Sifu, and they're in the little karate class, and we're doing, whatever it is. And I look at them and I say, hey, you know what? Little samurais take care of their room. And I understand you're not cleaning your room. What the heck? If you're not cleaning your room and wearing your uniform right, why should I teach you to punch and kick? Oh my God, Sifu told me to clean his room. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
And I hate to say it, it sounds so cliche, but it's true. It takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah.
And you as a parent, even though they might not listen to you directly, you orchestrate who's in that village. Who are the mentors that surround your kids? Who is it that your kid is looking up to? And I would say this, don't randomly let that happen. Take an active point. If they're in boys, I'm just going to use scouts or church activity. If you don't like the church leader per se that is in charge of that youth, then get them in a different youth group. Find those people those teachers, those mentors, those coaches that you're in alignment with. You're like, yeah, yeah. And have talks with them. Tell them what's going on. Hey, he's kind of acting up or whatever, and encourage those mentors kind of to work for you. They're your tools. And any mentor, any teacher, any coach worth their weight is going to understand that philosophy. And if they don't, run like hell, because that's not someone working for you.
It's
you know
the
what I
same
mean?
as an adult, though. It's the same as an adult. I think that advice goes for anyone. You should have that same advice, for yourself. If your mentors are not working with you, like for you, then you're not in the right place. There's been a lot of people that I've talked to. I know you too, Nicole, you're shaking your head, your head, that are stuck in a gym where they're unhappy. There's drama. The instructor's not listening to them, and they just don't feel at home. And I've been there, and I know several other people have been there. And you choose your mentors. What are you doing wasting your time there? If you feel horrible going every day, you drag yourself in, and they're doing nothing for you.
Yeah, and so back to your question about how you teach kids boundaries, and why I went off on that little tangent is one of the things I would recommend, in my experience working as for the parent and then as a stepdad, was that I make sure that our circle, our village, is working together to teach that child boundaries. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's important that if you tell your son or daughter, look, this is what is expected, these are the boundaries, that when they go to jujitsu class or they go to their extracurricular activities after school or even in school, that those coaches, mentors, and teachers also echo those same expectations and boundaries. You know what I'm saying? And that they're aware. And so, I've seen situations, you know what I'm talking about, where teachers are like, okay, we're going to do this, but hey, Johnny, I'm expecting a little bit better behavior out of you at this event. And Johnny knows why, for whatever reason, and he's like, oh, okay, and I would say also, when you're teaching it, this is sometimes hard to do, but you need to do it in a positive manner, not a negative manner. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Emphasize the positive. I'm not one to sugarcoat things. The negative is there, but still we can highlight the positive benefits of boundaries and behavior.
I think that's part of being a good leader as well. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Now, all of this, I just want to say for anybody listening, and just go on the record here, all of it I know sounds very fortune cookie, very cliche, and oh my God, it sounds so easy when you put it like that. Let me first tell you, I know from personal experience, it's not that easy, but it is doable. It is doable. And if you take the Kadima mentality, no, it's not as easy as run in and put water on the fire. You're going to get hot, you're going to get burned, but in the end, I'm just saying, what other options do you have? Let the house burn down? No. And if you understand that, the Kadima mentality of holding the boundary and going in there and throwing water on the fire, it's not necessarily easy. It's not the most comfortable thing to do. And you get a little scorched. But when all is said and done, it was the right thing to do. You can feel good about what you did, and the house won't burn down. Even though you may not feel that way when you're in there putting out the fire or dealing with an angry teen who's going through those trouble years. It's just like every single day they are like, man, you set the boundaries up and they think that they're targets. and they go for them, and they're not like shooting at them. They're driving a truck through them. You know what I'm saying? And they are testing your patience, and they're hitting your buttons like an angry kid on a keyboard. You know?
So many parents are home with their kids right now, and they're just, I mean, I'm sure this has crossed their minds. Like, how did it get this way? You know? And I think boundaries play a big role in that. Now that everybody's kind of been home and isolated together, you know, life's not happening, and, you know, you have a lot more time to kind of, I think it's a good topic for parents to hear, you know, probably more of as much as.
But again, I would emphasize, understand the why behind the boundary. Both what's expected and what the accountability is for breaking that boundary. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So many teens take unnecessary risk with their own safety, make stupid choices, and
I think
yeah, to a degree. And you know what? On the other hand, those are lessons learned, and that's the other thing I want to say on this too, is that you can't set up a boundary for everything and expect your kids not to make mistakes. One of my favorite quotes is, a lot of parents spend their time protecting their children from the same experiences that made them the parents they are.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I've heard that.
And so, you know, I don't want my kid to make any mistakes. I don't want my kid to ever do this wrong. I don't want my kid to do, well, I'm curious. You turned out okay. And when you look back on your life, you made some mistakes. You fell down, you bumped your head against the wall, you argued with your parents, you stormed out of the house. You know something? Kind of chuckle and watch those things go, and be understanding as you guide your kids through this. You know, I as a coach and as a mentor on the sidelines, I see it all the time. And I see a lot of parents and other coaches that want to take a sledgehammer to it. And that's not the right way to deal with it. But if you can put an arm around them and just walk them over. You know what I'm saying?
What did we learn from that experience, darling?
Yeah, well, what I'm saying, I guess a benign example without getting too personal or anything like that would be, again, back to refereeing. I've seen referees who, you know, yell at the fighters for, you know, get to their corner and this and that, and become very, very domineering in the ring. And other referees just walk over and look at the guy and say, hey, you know, I've had this experience myself where I came off like really authoritative, and then afterwards was sat down by some of my mentors, John Romero, Larry Landless, and they had to give it to me the hard way. And next thing you know, I'm in the ring. I got a fighter getting out of control, upset with the call, and I just walk over and I have a calm discussion with him, tell him to get back to the corner, you know, walk him right back over there. And I'm like, wow, that was so much easier to handle it that way than it was for me to, you know, be belligerent about it. You know what I'm saying? And it's just, you kind of, you learn that, hey, maybe with kids that are having problems, rather than coming, hey, you screwed up, sit down and say, wow, okay, how are we going to work through this? What do you want to do about this situation?
Oh yeah. I've learned it the long way with both spouse and kids. I used to be a yeller when they were little, and now it's like it's almost like both John and the kids get kind of upset with me when I don't get upset about something. So we'll be like having a argument or a discussion, and it gets kind of heavy, and I'll just be like, I don't believe that way, or I'll just stop right then and walk away and say, you know what, this is getting a little bit hot for me. We're going to discuss this later. Like, no, I want to discuss it now, man. Why aren't you upset? And I refuse to get upset anymore. I'm just like, I'm not going to get upset about this. I'm not going to stress out about this. This is my boundary. This is where I am with this. If we want to discuss it more, I'll wait for you to calm down and we'll discuss it in a couple hours.
You know, Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, rather than changing your mind in the moment with all of the hectic, emotion flying, right? You're holding your boundary. And I think so many people suffer. They don't realize what they're doing when they give in, in that moment. And the yelling thing, oh my goodness.
Well, all of us that do martial arts, and I've seen this time and time again, I've experienced it personally, that when you try to handle a violent situation, whether you're in a competition, you're on the mat rolling with someone, you're as a bouncer in the parking lot, if I let my emotions control me versus me control my emotions, I'm going to lose. I'm going to lose. When you see fighters that get so emotional, and what happens? They get stiff. They get slower. They make stupid mistakes. And the uncontrolled rage is not an intelligent way to fight. And you lose. It's not your best performance. It's bullshit. Excuse my language. But it is. It's bad. It's BS. Bad stuff. To think, that, oh, I'm just going to go emotion. I'm just going to go rage. I can't. You know what? I hope you do, because you're unbalanced. You're not thinking it through. You're not solving the problem. As we say in jiu-jitsu, it's chess, not checkers. And it definitely isn't hammer and nails. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, for sure. Like in my best competitions, my best wins for gold, I was completely calm. I was just kind of, I was confident, but not overconfident, but I was not that stiff, rageful, like the guys would tell you, and I've heard guys do this all the time, pretend they're gonna take your kids, pretend you need to take her head off. What are you doing talking to her and making friends with her on the sidelines before you fight her? And they're like, you need to channel your rage and be this rage monster while you're fighting someone. And the best fights I've had have all been where I'm just me and I'm chill and I'm doing this for fun. This is not a forced thing. I'm not in war. I'm fighting. I'm challenging myself and my jujitsu. I'm not trying to kill this person. And I don't know if that kind of feeds into the same concept, but the fights that I'm more chill and, this is just another day at work is better than this person's trying to sell my kids and I need to kill them.
Yeah, well, my point that I was going to make, I had to open up the door for a person here. The point I was going to make was that as a parent, that simple rule that we just talked about, keeping your cool, that needs to be a boundary you set as a parent, not to deal with your kid, not to deal with your children, your spouse, a situation. And this goes for not just parents, this goes for anyone. If you're going to have a Kadima mindset and deal like the firefighter going into the fire, you need to realize to be effective, you need a cool head. And you can't deal with the situation if you're emotional, if you're angry. And so you need to set the boundary that you step back and that you realize that you're emotionally compromised right now to make a rational decision, to deal with the child. You know what I'm saying? To deal with the situation because you are so emotional. Give yourself time to cool down, think rational, and then come back and deal with the problem. Mm-hmm. Now, on a side note, not all the time do the kids have to know that you're level-headed. Okay? There were times that both as a bouncer, as a coach, and as a step parent, that I was told afterwards, my gosh, man, we thought you lost your mind. You were crazy just now. And I'm thinking, I'm a good actor. I'm a really good actor. I wanted to think that I was crazy, but trust me, internally, I wasn't. I was thinking this through, and I knew what needed to be done, and they needed to see that stern face, and they needed to see that, but inside I really wasn't. Now, when I feel like, okay, that really is a genuine emotion that I need to step back and re-get my cool. And I think if you're going to be living a Kadima style, that's a boundary you need to have for yourself. Never act out of emotion. You know what I'm saying?
As a woman, that's very hard. I'll admit it to the whole world.
Well, for women or men, I've seen guys that just, they go from calm to rage over the drop of nothing. And I'm like, look, that you're not going to be as effective. You got to learn, to when the boundary is to step back and when you're losing it, and realize that you're most effective when you're level-headed. And that's just a simple boundary. And you got to learn that the hard way. I had to learn it the hard way. So I had to have it beat into me. So I've just learned that when I start getting emotional or I get angry, I just back away. I just walk away from the situation until I can first get myself under control. You can't ever hope to control, and I hate the word, you can't control others or the situation until you can first control yourself. That's the way it goes. And inside out.
That's a perfect into the podcast as far as like full circle. You have to control yourself. You have to know your why. Since we are almost at an hour and a half, do you have any further like things you want to say in regards to the podcast as a whole?
Who are you talking
to? Ryan.
Go ahead. Oh, you go ahead.
Oh, just as a whole? Well, I mean, if you're gonna live a Kadima mindset and be proactive in your life and take on the challenges in your life, I would highly recommend that you exercise some self-discipline first. You get a good mindset of what it is you want, as far as what it is your goals are, what it is you expect from things. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's professionally, in a relationship with your family, even in your martial arts training. Figure out what it is you want, set a schedule, set down what you're going to do. Also set down what you're going to sacrifice, because there is no achievement without sacrifice. That's one of those things. If going to practice requires 3 nights out of the week and someone says, hey, you're never here, you're never doing this, that's what you sacrificed. There is going to be a sacrifice. And then, like I said, know your boundaries, know why you have your boundaries, and that will give you the confidence and the courage to hold your boundaries like a fighter, like a Kadima,
Move forward. That's great. Kadima. You know what, Ryan, thank you so much for meeting with Stacey and I today. It really means a lot to me. And I'm sending positive vibes and thoughts you guys' way in regards to the near future here and what it holds. But I really appreciate your expertise and knowledge, and I look forward to training with you sometime. Yes. And learning from you and becoming certified.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for all you guys are doing. And thanks for having me here. Again, we're all of like mind. We're trying to move forward, be the best we can. I do know for a fact this is not going to last. Everyone, life may change a little bit, but like any challenge, any problem, it's in confronting our problems, solving those problems, that we gain the new tool set that moves us forward, that makes us better. And the meaning of life is really in the process of solving problems, not running from them.
Yeah.
And we learn more about our relationships. We learn more, you know, when you're dealing with a troubled teen, you learn more about yourself. You learn more about that teen. And you also learn more about that relationship. And afterwards, if done properly, it's a strong relationship. And it's because you jumped in there and you tried to solve it. We're going to get through this, and it's been a pleasure being here with you guys. And I look forward to seeing you in person and training with you guys.
Yes, training, definitely training.
Yeah.
All right. Well, from the Warrior Forged project part of things, always be your own hero, be Warrior Forged. And thank you for tuning in on our first WJJA podcast, our Women's Jiu-Jitsu Alliance. We're excited to be here, and there will be more to come.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.